So just to navigate the control panel tool, I want to just dive into some quick instructions. The main window, you may resize and move the main webinar window using the options in the upper right-hand corner. The control panel, you can use the arrow to open and close it at any time. And then for audio, you may choose from a few options. For the telephone mode, dial the phone number and access code displayed on the control panel to the right. Please remember that the PowerPoint is displayed sample information, and the number and access code you need to select from the control panel on the right may be different. To use the speakers built into your computer, be sure the sound is on and not muted. And then you may submit questions at any time throughout the webinar using the question component on the control panel. We plan to have approximately 10 minutes at the end of the webinar to address your questions, but feel free to submit them at any time during the presentation. So I've introduced myself now I think 9 or 10 times, but I am Jana Cogleiser, and I'm the team lead of Inside Sales. And I'm really excited to introduce our HR Solution Manager, Kelly Keaton. She has 21 years of experience in the human resources field, 10 years in executive level HR roles, most recently at H&R Block, and then she's also active in the National and Local Society for Human Resources chapters. So here's a quick snapshot of Perceptive Software, who we are, what we do, and where we're going. As you all know, we were founded in Kansas City in 1995. Perceptive Software builds enterprise content management software and solutions used by customers in more than 30 countries. In addition to our global headquarters in Kansas City, we have regional offices in London, Paris, Frankfurt, Amsterdam, Madrid, Milan, Budapest, Geneva, Dubai, Singapore, and Sydney. Perceptive Software was acquired by Lexmark in June of 2010 and operates as a standalone software business within Lexmark. We have a 10-year annual growth rate of more than 35%, which has made us one of the 10 largest enterprise content management companies in the world. And for the sake of time, I'm going to skip through this next slide and just introduce Kelly Keaton.
Okay, well, hello everyone. Thank you, Jana, for the introduction. As she mentioned, that I do have a background in human resources, spending all of my career practicing HR, and I share that with you just to let you know that from an HR perspective, I really do understand the challenges that we face with managing and processing documents. And so it's exciting for me to have the opportunity to talk with you today about some of the solutions that we have at Perceptive Software using ImageNow. And we'll jump right in. What I'd like to do is share with you the agenda. I'll start with talking about how we can eliminate that paper and storage space that you may have today for your employee files. Then we'll talk about the concept of a comprehensive employee file, meaning having everything associated with an employee all in one place. We'll talk about how to create an electronic employee file. Once we've done that, how to access the documents within it. And then how do we move from existing paper documents to electronic files. We'll touch a little bit on onboarding and then compliance, retention, and reporting, and I'll summarize with efficiencies. And as Jana mentioned, please do submit questions along the way as you have them. You'll also have an opportunity to submit questions once we finish, but we really want to take the time to answer your questions, so please just feel free to submit those as we go. Okay, so on your screen you're seeing a very dreadful picture of someone's desk, and I share this because not to insult anyone in HR, but I know that this is sometimes how it feels with the type of paper and volume that we process every day. So what we want to do is move you away from this type of feeling and more to a desk that looks a little bit more like this. So how do we do that? Well, starting today, if you indeed have a file room with all of your employee files in it, you've probably got a lot of metal filing cabinets, and anyone with a key to those storage rooms can have access to any files within them. So what we know about that is it's just not secure and it's not compliant. So what we want to do in moving to an electronic world is to eliminate that as a problem. So some of the challenges with having some of these filing cabinets is we also have documents associated with employees sitting in a lot of different places. So you have your HR team has a file for an employee, payroll may have some documents in a file, benefits has some documents in a file, managers hold a file, and then you also may have some software systems that have documents held within them. So what we want to do is eliminate that concept of having copies and copies of documents everywhere and getting everything into one place, and we can do that with ImageNow. And what you gain from that is really the efficiency of a one-stop shopping experience, as well as access. You can really work anywhere and have immediate access to any documents from any location. So you're not having to call someone that has access to the file room if you're sitting at a different location. The other efficiencies that we have are with audits. And I just know from my personal experience, I've spent literally weeks and sometimes even months trying to pull together documents for specific audits. With an electronic file, you really have single-click access to the documents for an employee, and you can complete those audits in seconds or days. You also know where the original document lives, which is always important to an auditor. So to kind of carry on with this theme of the comprehensive employee file, I'd like to talk a little bit about systems. So what I'll show you on your screen, this looks like a busy slide, but let me just quickly walk you through it. On the top left side of your screen, you'll see a lot of different HRIS systems. So you may be using any of these or even something else, maybe even homegrown. And with ImageNow, we can integrate with those systems. So you see across the top that integration happens with our secure document repository. And I'll show you in a minute how that integration works, and it really allows you to access documents for your employees straight from your HRIS system. But at the bottom of your screen, I'm showing some third-party applications, and these may be systems for things like onboarding or recruitment, maybe an applicant tracking system, performance reviews. If you already have systems that are automating those processes, what we can also do is integrate with those as well. So records and documents that are held within those systems will be able to be stored in ImageNow, so that what you get is, again, that comprehensive employee file for that one-stop shopping. So I don't want to take away from the fact that these other systems, your HRIS or any third-party applications, those are always going to be your system of record. But what we're talking about here is an electronic employee file that is in one secure document repository in ImageNow. So let's talk about how do we create the electronic files. Where do we even start? So the first place is we talked a little bit about that metal filing cabinet, and you probably have some organization going on there with some hanging folders for each employee, and you might even have colored folders that can separate the right kind of documents from the others so they're not sitting next to one another. So what we do in the electronic world is we build out drawers or secure folders, if you will, that can hold the right types of documents within them, so that the medical documents are not sitting next to your I-9s, your disciplinary documents are not sitting next to your payroll documents, but you have access to all those documents and they're gathered together in the right secure way. And this is important when we talk about not only compliance, but who can access those documents, and I'll speak to that a little bit more in a moment. So I just want to mention one other really nice thing about when we put the documents into the drawer that I'm showing here, you can assign attributes to the different types of documents. So not only does it know what drawer it should go in, what employee it's associated with, but you can add other attributes such as location or cost center or maybe a business unit, so that when you're searching for documents, not all people have access to all documents. You may have HR professionals that only need to see documents in one location. You may also have HR professionals that don't need to see one another's files. So you can assign attributes based on security as you create that filing cabinet. And we actually have a team that helps you set that up to emulate what you have today, and then maybe even make some process improvements on top of it. So let's talk about security. This is always the most important thing in HR because we're dealing with so much confidential information, and it's important. This is probably number one. So we'll start with access, and I mentioned this earlier. We really can put security around who can access what document all the way down to the document type. You also may have security based on a group of users. And so an HR generalist may have access to maybe all documents with the exception of, say, a payroll garnishment. And then a recruiter may need to have access to a lot of the recruitment documents, but maybe not the benefits file. So we can put security around that, around the documents held within the electronic file based on who has access. And then on the right side of your screen, we can really separate out and put security around how we organize that file. And I talked to this a little bit in the previous slide, but we do have what we call indexing, where we can consistently list out how we attribute a file or a document to an employee, which helps us with access, but it also helps us with security. And then finally, workflow. And if you're not familiar with workflow, it's really just the movement of a document from one approver to the next. So if you can picture it as moving through from one person's inbox to the next person. But what you can eliminate when you have electronic employee files is that exposure that you have on paper. So you don't have a document sitting on someone's desk with a social security number, or you don't have some HIPAA violation with some medical confidentiality. And then you also don't have to have interoffice mail or U.S. Post where you're actually exposing sensitive information, because these documents, as they move through a workflow process, stay electronic and are not paper. So that's a little bit about security and how we create the electronic file. Let's talk about how do we access those documents once we have our filing cabinet created. So I'll show you one specific example. There are many, many ways that different types of users can access documents, but I really like to talk about this first way to access documents because it's part of our patented technology we call Learn Mode. But let's start with the example that an HR person receives an email from an employee and they have a very simple question about their W-4. So in paper world, you would have to, you may store this in your HRIS system, but you would probably have to go to the filing room to get access to the document or call someone who can get the document for you. What you can do with ImageNow is you can simply go to your HRIS system at your desk, and I'm using the example of PeopleSoft, but this could be really any HRIS system, and you would pull up the record of the employee that's asking the questions. And then once you get that on your screen, you're simply able to click on an ImageNow button in your system tray and pull up all of the documents associated with that employee. And that's, of course, the documents that you have access to based on security. So then the HR user would click on the W-4 because that's the document in question, and they can simply answer the question. They can also print it out if you'd like to do that, or you can also create a hyperlink and be able to email that document to the employee if they'd like to have that for their records. So again, this is one example of how we access. It's really, really nice technology to be able to have one-click access and no more cardio to the filing room. So I was sharing with you an example of how you can look at all of the documents associated with one employee, and this is just a screenshot of our system in ImageNow that shows you what that might look like. And I wanted to point your attention to, on the far right side of the screen, we have the workflow queue list. And what that means is, as I mentioned earlier, a workflow is whose desk it is on. So this is one great feature that we have against the paper world. In the paper world, you may have questions about, well, where did that document go, or who's working on it now, and whose desk it is on. So you can see here from this view that we have the ability to be able to see where a document is in the process. Okay, so that's an example of how we can see all of the documents within one employee's file. We also have the ability to search for types of documents. So what I'm showing you on your screen is a very, very easy search tool. This is an example of payroll, and they may only want to see the 401k documents, the direct deposit authorizations, and the W-4s. And they can do this for a set of employees or a location or maybe the entire company. So we have access to documents in that way too, which is really nice from an internal audit perspective, or if you're needing to pull all of those documents at once. So that gives you an example of a couple of different ways to access documents. So let's talk about moving from paper to electronic. What I mean from this is if we have paper processes today, and I'm sure many of you do, and we're still passing documents from paper from one person to the next, how do we make that an electronic process? And we do that with electronic forms. And on your screen now you can see a list of what we put together, and this is what we call our top 25, but it's really endless, the type of documents that may be paper in your world today that can be moved to an electronic form. Now, if you already have a recruiting tool or an onboarding tool, that's great. We're really not here to compete with those. We're here to complement them. So if you have employee self-service in your HRIS system, that's great too. We really are just providing you examples of potentially paper documents that you have in your organization that we can help you make electronic. So here's what it looks like to access an electronic form. An employee would just click on your employee portal, and in this example is a direct deposit or authorization. So the employee would fill out the fields within the form and hit submit and get an acknowledgement that it was sent. And then this form is immediately sent to payroll so that the payroll associate can validate the information and do some data entry. But there are a lot of other really nice features about an e-form, and I'll just talk about those efficiencies here quickly. So first of all, as I showed you, you can access these forms from the portal. So it's really kind of seamless to the employee. They don't really know that they're accessing anything with ImageNow. They're not even required to have a license for ImageNow. They're able to just access that form, and we can tie in to your single sign-on security to be able to pre-populate some of the fields within that form, which is really nice because an employee may not always remember the spelling of their manager name or their cost center. So we can have those fields pre-populated with any data that you're currently holding in HRIS. Then once the employee fills out the form, then it will route to the necessary approvers, and we can always track whose desk it's on and who's pending approval. We can establish required fields. So if they didn't fill it out completely, which we see this in the paper world all the time, we can require those fields before they can submit. Another nice thing is notifications and alarms. So as we know, some managers or some approvers aren't as quick as we would like to process a document in their inbox. So we can create a notification or an alarm, and it could be in the form of an email, it could be a flashing dot on the screen, a lot of different options for being able to notify someone that they have a document that needs to be approved, and this would mostly be for people that aren't using the system that often. So another nice feature with electronic forms is we can actually take the data from the form once it's gone through the approval process and push that directly back into HRIS. So what you're doing is you're eliminating any keying or manual data entry. So think about the time and the money that you're saving, and then also the reducing the risk for errors when you're not doing that manual keying. And then finally, retention, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. And then electronic signatures are also possibilities. Electronic signatures, we actually have a product called eAuthorize. This is above and beyond what you can do with traditional digital signatures. Digital signatures are really just a subset of electronic signatures. And we have, our product is in compliance with the eSign Act of 2000, and many of your legal departments will need to make the decision on how comfortable you are if you were to use an electronic signature in lieu of a wet signature, but this product does allow you in many ways, whether it's through the mouse to sign a biometric signature or through a special sign-in and authorization for a certified signature. Okay, moving along, I'd like to talk about onboarding. And when I talk about onboarding, if you can just kind of open up your minds to the fact that I'm really focusing on new hire paperwork on that first day of orientation. And so many of our customers, they have different varieties of the way they handle these documents. Some may be already automated within your employee self-service, or you may have a third party that helps you collect these documents. And we also have several different ways that we can approach onboarding in order to fit your needs. So let's start with the concept that it may just be all paper. So you're having the employees come in on the first day and fill out all the paper. Well, in that case, you would scan those paper documents into the system and we can route them. But let's say that you're looking at electronic documents that you're receiving. We can really handle any type of content that you might have as part of new hire documentation or any documentation that needs to be submitted to the employee file. So we can bring those documents in. Maybe it's on a SharePoint portal. Maybe it's an attachment to an email. Maybe it's coming in through an electronic form. But the point I want to make here is that we really have, any options for bringing new hire documents or any type of documents into ImageNow for your electronic filing cabinet. So when those documents come into the system, they need to get routed to the right approvers. And the way we do that is through a workflow process. And I'm showing you an example on your screen that is specific to onboarding or new hire paperwork. And so this is behind the scenes. So for HR users, don't be nervous that this is something that you need to know. It's really something that our IT friends can help us with, or maybe an HRIS specialist. But it's a tool that allows us to design the route that document needs to go through to get approval. And the great thing about this is it's Visio technology, so it's drag and drop. And it's very, very easy to not only build a workflow that you would like to have for your process, but also to change it and edit it. And it's something that you can do in-house without having to call out and have special programming or coding done to change your processes. So in this example, you can see that there are some documents that might need to go to benefits for processing as part of a new hire document. Some need to go to payroll. Maybe some need to go to IT so they can get their system set up. Some need to go to facilities to get a badge. But eventually those documents go into a complete file, which is their electronic filing employee file. So that's a little bit about workflow. Let's talk about the concept of if you were to want to take your onboarding process completely away from paper and have it fully be electronic from start to finish. We have a tool that allows you the ability to send an email to your new hire once they've accepted the job with a link to a portal which includes all of the forms that you might have that they need to fill out. This allows them to access from home before they ever start all of the documents to be filled out, and they can be completed and submitted before they ever walk in the door. So this is just an example of a portal. We can really make this look however you want. Each organization, with the exception of state and federal forms, each organization really has their own new hire documents. So we have a library to choose from, but then you also may have some of your own, and we provide you a designer to build those, or you can also have us build them for you. So I'm showing you a screenshot here of the employee cover sheet, and so this is a sheet where the new hire would actually start, and you can pre-populate some of the fields within this. Maybe it's coming out of your applicant tracking system, it might be coming out of your HRIS system, but nevertheless what the employee will do is complete the fields within this employee cover sheet. And I show you this because what happens is we're able to take the information from this cover sheet and pre-populate all of the other forms that are a part of the new hire process. So many of you probably have been in a situation where you're filling out your new hire paperwork and you have to write your name, your social, your address 15 times. This really eliminates all of that because it takes the necessary information and pre-populates the field to its extent. So a couple of features, I'll move through this quickly, but the forms benefits in the forms library that we can provide, we have data integration, so we have pre-population into the forms, which I mentioned, but you can also extract data from these forms and populate your HRIS system. Again, we're eliminating that manual keying. Online and offline, so let's say you're on an airplane or you're not connected to the internet, you can fill all of this information out when you're offline and then be able to send them once you're online. So that's a nice feature. We talked about digital signatures, electronic signing. We have all of that capability. We can attach documents, so if it's a direct deposit and they need to attach a copy of a canceled check, as an example. You can also export the data from the forms into your HRIS, which I think I mentioned. And then you can also export that form image into the employee file. Of course, that's where we want it to end up. And then finally, we also have mobile access. So if your new hires are wanting to use their phones or their tablets, they can do that as well. Okay, just a few more things that I'd like to point out about opportunities that you have within the HR solution. So again, we started out with our basics, which is really building that electronic file. So the thing that we want to start with is making sure that we're taking the paper out of our existing filing cabinets. And then I've showed you some tools for taking any additional paper out of our processes. And then there are a few more features that I want to point out, and then we'll wrap up and we can get to some questions. So when we think about compliance, retention is always a pretty big topic in HR. We have a tool that's called Retention Policy Manager, and it gives you the ability to put a retention timeline on a document so that it can be removed from the file when it needs to be. So we have some federal regulations that tell us how long to keep those documents, but most companies, you probably already have your own retention policies, and what we do is we use this tool to take your policies and apply them with the tool. And so you can set this up based on a time or maybe even an event. So time being, after 2 years. But an event can be, so let's say you're terminating an employee in your HRIS system, we can automatically trigger. So it knows that that person is now inactive, and we know that 4 years from that date, that document needs to be removed from the file. So you have options for how that document is removed. In some cases, you want it completely destroyed. And in some cases, you may want to move it to a kind of an offline server for storage if you ever needed it later. Sometimes we have customers that have, pension, retirement documents moved out of the active file. So you have a lot of options. And then you also have the ability to assign approvers to eliminate that document. So if you have some sort of a super user that can be the one to determine is that document ready to be removed from the file, then they would get a notification. So you don't have to be fearful that the document is just going to go poof into thin air, disappear, and then you'll never have access to the document again. So that's not the case. We also have an audit trail to show what's been removed. One final thing on this is in the event that you have a litigation situation or you're in the middle of an audit, you have the ability to put holds on those documents. So those are 2 cases in particular that you would never want a document to be removed from your files. So you have the ability to do that as well. So without going on and on retention policy, I just wanted to share with you kind of some highlights on that. And one other thing that I want to share with you, which is a great tool for HR, I know personally this is near and dear to my heart, this is the ability to see what's in the file and what's not. So we call this our document deficiency reporting. So you can see on your screen, this is an example of onboarding, so the documents across the top of the screen. And then you can run this for any list of employees. It could be employees that started that day. It could be all employees. It could be at one department. You can do it however you want. But you can see there's a check mark if the document is in the file and if it's not. So we always are struggling and chasing. First of all, we hope that that file is in the filing cabinet in that paper world. But then knowing what all is in it is even more hard. It's all manual. So this is your one-click canned report ability to go look at the documents that are deficient within your file. Okay. I'm going to wrap up here with just some few final thoughts that I'd like to take you through. And I think I've touched on most of these, but this is just in summary. So first of all, when you move to ImageNow using Perceptive Software products, you can really reduce the cost. So it's not just the storage space and the filing cabinets and the papers and the files and the copying, but also the administration, because it really does take a lot of time to chase paper from one place to the next. From a compliance perspective, I think you probably saw some good examples where we can put security around those files, not just who can access them, but being able to tell who tried to access them. And then also we talked about retention. We don't want documents in that filing cabinet longer than they should be. And then audit, of course, from a compliance perspective, we always want to be super clean, and you can do that much better in the electronic format. Going green, we're hearing this more and more and more as an initiative for corporations across the board. So we're certainly accomplishing that goal here. Same with disaster recovery. Unfortunately, we've had a lot of examples of natural disasters that have destroyed very important employee files. So with the electronic filing, you completely take that risk off the table. And then accuracy. You always know where that document is located. You're eliminating the manual keying. And then I also showed you the document deficiency reporting. So you know that everything that should be in the file is in the file. And then just to wrap up, my very, very favorite, and this is about efficiency, because as an HR person, you can now have the ability to access any document from an employee file at any time, and all of your documents are in a one-stop shopping place. You can provide better customer service because of this. You can answer questions quickly and be more credible with your clients. And then, best of all, you're saving time for strategy and working on the things that you'd rather spend your time on than administration. So with that, that's what I have to cover. I hope you have some questions coming in. I continue to keep sending those questions. And then if you could just enter them into the question panel on your GoToWebinar screen, then we'll quickly go through these and see what we've got. So bear with us for a second. Okay, the first question I have is this solution available on-premise? Yes, we have several different options that we can offer for where that information should be stored. Hosted, we can also work in the cloud with SaaS.
Yes, we have. We do have a few different deployment options. We have for on-premise, we would have some solution on-premise, which would be where you're subscribing to the software, but you are hosting it, and then the other on-premise would be you could perpetually, you could own it, and then we also have SaaS where we would host it here, but you're subscribing to it, and then there's also the traditional deployment option too.
Okay, a couple more questions. Question about ADP's Virtual Edge product. Yes, we do integrate with ADP. Question about the canned forms. Are they sold as a bundle or individually? And I'm assuming that you're talking about the from the onboarding, the library of forms, and those are sold. We can do it either way. So we have kind of tiers where you can do a bundle purchase of forms. Sometimes we have situations where there are just kind of the state and federal forms, and maybe a couple more, and then the rest then you kind of want to build on your own to be specific to you. But yes, we do have options for how we sell those, whether they be in a bundle or individually.
For who do we contact offline to get more information? Please contact your inside sales representative or your account executive, and if you are unsure who that is, you can email me. I think my email information is on the webinar invite, so feel free to email me if you have any questions. And then we also will be sending out the recording of this webinar for you to forward on to your peers or for those who missed it.
Okay, let's see. I'm just looking through some more questions. Keep them coming if you have them. So here are a couple of questions that are a little bit technical for me, and I'll give it a shot, and if we need to get back to you, we certainly will. So your question was, is it a single sign-on based on LDAP based? And so the answer is yes, and what we can do is we can tap into that level of security, so when an employee does log on using their single sign-on, we can be able to recognize who that employee is in order to pre-populate fields within it. Let's see. Got that. Will we be able to access this presentation? Yes, we'll be sending that out. Another question is about Kronos. We are integrated with several of our customers with Kronos, so that is not a problem. So the answer is yes. Okay, what is the standard process for entering paper documents into the system? So this is a good question, and I talked about this a little bit with respect to, different types of content and getting information into the system. But when you're talking about that paper that's sitting in your active files now, and how do you go through the process on the front end to build that filing cabinet? We have a couple of different ways to tackle that, and we can help you. Obviously, we need to design the electronic filing cabinet so we know where those documents need to go. But we also work with a third party, or actually you can even bring it in-house, the actual scanning project to bring those documents in and have them indexed properly into the files. So we can use barcoding technology. We have ways to recognize common documents so that those are coded appropriately. There are many different approaches to how many documents, all of the documents, or maybe you just want to bring them in bulk. So there are a lot of different options on how to bring your paper documents into the system. Without talking too long on this, I do want to make one more comment on that. It's really the more work you do on the front end to identify the type of document and getting it into the right place on the front end, then you just have a lot more usability options. So that when you're searching and then you're having workflow, you're able to access exactly all of the documents that are held within the system. Okay, question about security and IT access. So this is always a question. And I'm glad that you raised it. And so, obviously with our customers, we're working with not only the business users, but we usually do have an IT contact, and it's usually handled the way you would with your HRIS system. So you would have a super user that would have access. But we work with you on this security and who can access what documents. So your question is a good one because every one of our customers have that, and so we work with you to assign access and ability to access different information within the system. Another question about document deficiency, is it a separate module? The answer is yes. So what I showed you is a report screenshot from a module that's called Business Insight. And Business Insight is in addition to the standard kind of in-the-box image now. And so if you would like information about some of the other features of Business Insights, please reach out to your AEX so they can help you to determine pricing and what that might look like for you. Because there's really a lot of functionality within Business Insight besides document deficiency. So you may be interested in taking a look at some of those other features. Okay, the forms library, is it U.S. specific or do you have pre-made for other countries, for example, Canada? It depends. So we do have customers worldwide. The forms library right now is more specific to the U.S. However, what we would do is work with you on which specific forms that you would require for any of those other countries, and so that we can easily build those out. And in some cases, that may be an exercise that you want to bring in-house because the tool comes with a designer so that you can do that on your own, or we can provide those for you if they're not in the library. Okay, another question I have here is, can approvals be escalated? So for example, if a manager is on vacation, but does the approval roll up? The answer is yes. So if you think about the workflow designer that I showed you and the different queues or the different approval steps that a document needs to have, we have an out-of-office tool in the workflow designer so that if you have a manager or a group of approvers that are not available, then you can provide an out-of-office opportunity so that that document doesn't get stuck in the workflow. Another question is, we have paper employee files, Lawson, and just implemented Silk Road, OpenHire, Red Carpet, Wingspan. Can Perceptive Software work with all of these? Yes. And so what we find with some of the third-party suites like Silk Road, Open Hire, Red Carpet, Wingspan actually came from acquisition, so they might be in different platforms. So there's not a standard way that we integrate with each one, but we have integrated with each of them, so yes, that is a possibility. I have a question here about a Kaiser Department, and I'm not sure I understand the question. If you could either expand upon the question or contact an AEX, that might be helpful. I'm sorry, I don't know exactly what the question is. Okay, it looks like, okay, we had a question about encryption. I've taken your name down, and we'll contact you with one of our technical representatives. I think that's all, unless we see any new ones come in. I really want to thank you for your time today. I've really enjoyed sharing this information with you, and so has Jana. And again, reach out to your AEX if you have questions, and we're happy to help answer those and follow up with any parts of the demonstration that you might have. Okay? Thank you for your time. Have a great day.